Good morning. It's Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. This morning is Thursday, the 8th of September 2022, and I'm doing program number 47. It's presentation, a lesson, a podcast, whatever you want to call it, and it's part of the World History series by me here on Facebook, live on Facebook. And the reason why I go live is I enjoy the contact, the direct contact with people who want to follow what I say when I say it. However, once I finish, it becomes a podcast. This presentation becomes a podcast, and you can eventually get it on Insegna.com. I have to put it up, of course. So there are most of them are up already, and as we move along, they go up on Insegna.com, also on TomPadulaTV on YouTube, and also on TomPadula.blogspot.com. So it's quite an interesting development, this online situation where, we can be ourselves and show the world what we know or what we can access, because all of what I do is, you have to do a bit of research of whatever you're doing, and therefore, you pick up, being a bookseller, Insegna Booksellers, I enjoy looking at the various books, and, some of them are really have got very good information, but mostly when it comes to history, history is what it is. However, there are various interpretations to the same set of facts about the past. So, you need a bit of understanding that not everything that one reads about history is necessarily true. But the facts are facts. But then there are the various interpretations of those facts. So we are now, we've reached now the Normans, and I've looked up, the Normans. The Normans were a population arising in the medieval Duchy of Normandy from the intermingle between Norse Vikings, settlers and indigenous West Franks, and Gallo-Romans. The term is also used to denote immigrants from the duchy who conquered other territories such as England and Sicily. So the Normans had a very big impact historically during the Middle Ages, from the Dark Ages into the Middle Ages. So it's around 1200, 1000 to 1200, 300. So the Normans, remained a power in Europe for a long time. So that's one. The other thing that I'm interested in world history is looking at the development of China and the dynasties, and the way they sort of, the dynasties sort of are present in China right from the beginning, literally, from the very close to the beginning, and they've kept going until the 20th century, until the Communist Revolution of 1917. So what do we make of this culture of, say, Russia? Where there are the Tsars, the dynasties, there. Think about that. The dynasties were in the north, in China, in various other parts of the world. In other words, the idea of being a king, being God on earth in your own area, and you have control, legal control of the whole of the land, and therefore you impose your laws, and you do whatever you can to make it, to bring the people in those areas together, one culture. And of course, those cultures also subdivide into smaller cultures. And during the feudal system developed during this time, and the Normans were great proponents of this. and we're going to find out today how we're going with that. And of course, I will not forget America, the United States. We've got a problem with chronology there because, the indigenous people there did not have writing as such, like the indigenous people of Australia, and therefore, the actual details of their history is not available, even though they were discovered by by people like Christopher Columbus, the Vikings, etc. The reality is that people migrated to all the continents way before, during the Paleolithic era, almost going back to going to the Neolithic era and going further back to the Paleolithic era. Okay, so after that we got to Australia before the invasion, and then we'll handle also after the invasion with some reading from Banjo Patterson and Henry Lawson. And I'll finish off today with my trip to Darwin, Broome and Perth. We'll do a bit of we did Mindle Beach last time, and we're going to go to the Maracay Creek and Adelaide River Foreshore Conservation Area, and we're going to look at some crocodiles, chasing the crocodile in the north. Okay, it's 11:30. We might as well start, huh? So, welcome to anyone who comes on, and here we go. The Norman Conquest, the feudal system, and the church. We're going to talk about these. Let's see how we go. At least with the Norman Conquest first. The Norman win England at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. So, almost 900 years ago, Britain, the home of our ancestors. So, this book here, of course, is written in England for English students, of course, and also by extension to Australia as well. Okay, and other parts of the world. And were conquered for the first, so the English, the Saxons, if you like, because then the Saxons also, once the Normans were there, they also intermingled, in terms of marriages, etc. So they were conquered for the fourth time, the Saxons and the English, the wives of the Vikings. First the Saxon, then the Vikings, then the English, the Normans, etc., etc. Okay, so in 1066, William, Duke of Normandy, that was in the northern part of France, crossed the Channel with a large army and defeated Harold, the last of the Saxon kings, at the Battle of Hastings. In the Museum of Bayeux, in Normandy, you can still see the story of the conquest woven in pictures on the interesting Bayeux tapestry. The Bayeux tapestry is still there, and I haven't seen it, but you can go when you go to Europe next time. You can actually go there. Yes, I am live. I thought for a moment I wasn't live. Anyway, never mind. One picture shows Harold falling dead on the battlefield with a Norman arrow in his eye, because they used to have the archers, and he got one in the eye. Normans more cultured than the English at the time. On Christmas Day of the same year, William the Conqueror had himself crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey, the beautiful church which had been begun by Edward the Confessor, and in which English kings are still crowned today. Edward the Confessor was the son of Alfred the Great. And how do I know that? I've been watching the series of the Vikings and the Last Kingdom, the Last Kingdom series on Netflix. Though they were fierce warriors and then stern rulers, William and his followers were much more civilized than their barbarous Viking ancestors had been when they had come to France about 200 years earlier. Again, we always go back to the Romans and their laws and, and the culture that they developed and the language. So anyone in contact with a great empire like Rome cannot be not affected by it. As we have seen in the last chapter, they were on the whole more cultured than their English subjects, so that in the long run England learned much from her new masters and gained from the conquest. So it's not always true that you lose when you lose. Sometimes you win because you're losing. It's an interesting concept. French, the language of government for 200 years or more. Since the Normans had become Frenchmen, French was, for the next 200 years or more, the language spoken by the king, his nobles, and important government officers. So they had moved away from Latin, but Latin was still strong in the church. So Latin was still alongside, the ancient Latin was still alongside the French in terms of the laws, etc. Gradually, however, the Normans adopted English ways and English speech just as they had adopted French. So, the way languages work is if the people use it, then it becomes the language. Eventually, if everyone is using that language, it becomes the national language. And then you can do all sorts of things with the language, because then you can tell your stories, you can do your education with it, you can do your laws and everything else. In 1362, English once again became the official language of the law courts. In 1362, that's from 1066. So that's, 300 years. It's a long time. Meanwhile, thousands of French words were taken into the language, and English has been very good at absorbing idioms from other languages. Very good. Unbelievably successful. And, I can say that with personal knowledge of it. For instance, English serfs had to look after sheep, bullocks and calves in the fields. But when the flesh of these animals had been cooked and placed on the table, it was called by the French words mutton, beef and veal, by the French lords who ate it. So he killed them in the English idioms, and you ate them in the French idioms. Normans make the English serfs, but if you were, you had been a conquered people, you can't be part of government. Don't we know? And migrants is the same. It takes a long time for migrant people, from particular ethnic groups to become part of government. It's not easy. You need an element of acceptance by everyone else. So, at the moment we have an Australian Prime Minister of Italian and Irish background, and his Italian, I believe, would not be very good at all. He went to school here, etc. But the background is what it is. Identity is important. So we all have to accept the fact that our new Prime Minister is not of English background, but of Italian and Irish background. And the next time it'll probably be of Chinese background and indigenous background, but it's going to take time before these things actually mesh together and we produce the ultimate multicultural Australian who regards all people in the country as one family. Let's not forget that. And I want to learn, maybe, I want to teach some indigenous language one of these days, but do we have permission to do so? Do we have to ask for permission? I believe we should not. We should be able to be free to teach whatever language you want. Okay, these words may remind you of the hard times experienced at first by the conquered English. Under the Saxon kings, many Englishmen had worked as serfs on the great estates of noblemen, but many others had lived in free villages, owning and working their own land. William I gave all the lands to the Normans, and practically every Englishman became the servant of a Norman lord for whom he had to work or fight. Even though it was their own land, he says, well, listen, it's what we've done to the indigenous people. And he said, well, this, terra nullius doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the English kings. And it's divided up into states, etc., etc. And then the other one says, oh, well, but, after 200 years or 300 years, then one has to accept certain things that have happened in the past and make amends. So, Normans and practically every Englishman became the servant of a Norman lord for whom he had to work or fight. Those who rebelled like Hereward the Wake were mercilessly punished. So if you didn't obey, you were punished. Although life in England after the Norman conquest was still rough and barbarous in many ways, compared with what it had been in Roman times, there was more law and order and more education than there had been in the Dark Ages. So things started to move towards, education, the arts, etc. But they still fought. That is why many historians speak of the period between about 1066 as the Middle Ages or medieval times. So the medieval times were those 300-400 years up to the Renaissance. It was a period midway between the Dark Ages and that followed the fall of Rome and today. Well, I'd say to the Renaissance. Okay, so then next time I will tackle the feudal system, which in many ways we still adopt today. The feudal system now with the corporations, the big companies, it's not quite the same, but the idea is there that there are classes of people that benefit more than others from the work of all. But, you can't help it really, can you? If you run a large company or a bank, insurance company, the people at the top and make decisions. What they say has to go. So they can only be partially controlled by the state. A lot of them still got, you still got that thing about power. Anyway, let's go to China. Now, today we're going to do the three kingdoms, the two Jin dynasties and the southern and northern dynasties. Let me see if I can read it all. I have to go fairly fast, but I might, stop that much, but let's see. The period of the three kingdoms, the western and eastern Jin dynasties and the southern and northern dynasties, is also called the period of Wei. Jin and the southern and northern dynasties, it started in the year of 2020 when Cao Pi claimed himself emperor of the kingdom of Wei, and ended in 589 when the Sui dynasty wiped out Chen and united the whole country once more, and it was prolonged more than 360 years. So almost getting to our times that we've looked at Europe in the year 800. In 2021, the year after the setting up of the Kingdom of Wei by Cao Pi, Liu Bei established the Kingdom of Shu, and in 2022, Sun Quan founded the Kingdom of Wu, which formed a situation of tripartite confrontation. The capitals of these three kingdoms were located in today's Luoyang, Chengdu, and Nanjing, respectively. A bit like in Europe with the kingdoms. In 263, Wei wiped out Shu. In 265, Sima Yan, a Wei minister, seized the throne of Wei, declared founding of the Jin dynasty, and chose Luoyang as his capital. This is known as the Western Jin dynasty. In 280, and we're talking about after the birth of Christ here, Sima Yan conquered Wu, ending the Three Kingdoms period. But the Jin dynasty itself was overrun by nomadic people in 316. So about, 280, that's only, 36 years later. China fell into disruption again. In 317, Sima Rui, a descendant of the royal family of the Jin dynasty, proclaimed himself emperor of the Eastern Jin dynasty, whose capital was today's Nanjing. At the same time, several minority ethnic groups in the Yellow River Basin also established many states. For more than 130 years, northern China was chaotically divided. This period is called the period of the 16 states. So northern China was divided up into, like a feudal system anyway, different little states. In 439, the Northern Wei, established by a minority people, united the North. Emperor Xiao Wen of the Northern Wei conducted reforms, decreeing the adoption of native Chinese institutions, language and costume. This resulted in a great intermixing of different ethnic groups in the north. Later, the Northern Wei split into the Eastern and Western Wei, and then the Northern Qi replaced the Eastern Wei, and the Northern Zhou replaced the Western Wei. The above 5 northern dynasties are known as the Northern Dynasties. During the 170 years from 420 to 589, following the fall of the Eastern Jin, there appeared 4 dynasties in succession, namely the Song, Qi, Liang, and Chen. Song, Qi, Liang, and Chen. From the Jin, from the Wei dynasty. These 4 dynasties are called the Southern Dynasties. The period when the Southern Dynasties and the Northern Dynasties coexisted is called the Southern and Northern Dynasties. So you give it names. And then as you study and you get closer to the knowledge, you become more familiar with it. During the 3 Kingdoms period, the social politics, economy, and diplomacy all achieved its unique style, and there emerged a great number of outstanding statesmen and generals, the foremost of whom were Cao Cao and Zhuge Liang. The 3 Kingdoms period of the 2 Jin dynasties and the Northern and Southern dynasties produced many famous thinkers, strategists, scientists, literary figures, painters, and calligraphers. Also, a large number of famous works were produced which had a positive influence on the development of the social and natural sciences. These scientific and cultural achievements are gems of the Chinese cultural heritage. And we should know a lot more about it but there's a lot of, Chinese history written in English, and in other languages too. Everyone is interested, really, if you are interested. Everyone is interested if you are interested. So you have to become interested in order to be interested. Simple. During the 3 Kingdom period of the 2 Jin dynasties and the Northern and Southern dynasties, the powerful European Roman Empire fell into parts and the Western Roman Empire drew its last breath as well. And then the Mongols arrive and they invade. They go right up to Hungary, Budapest. I think even Poland, I'm not sure. The Teutons established their kingdoms in the Western Europe. And since then, Europe stepped into the feudal society. So they came, the understanding here is that Charlemagne knew about the Chinese, the people after him, the Mongols, etc. So they sort of developed the feudal system from the idea that the leader is a product, a person coming directly from God. So the God on earth. So that's where we are, the 3 Kingdoms. And then we got to the details, Cao Cao and Zhuge Liang, etc. So we just covered there a period of, about 800 years, if not more. and then we see what influence that some of these leaders had on the rest of, on the rest of the population in China. But whilst all this was happening in China and in Europe, there wasn't much happening in the Americas, in the sense that, well, maybe in the central part, in Central America, yes, with, the Aztecs and the others. When you try to recall the names, if you're not on it, the Maya people, they had, good civilizations as well. However, the writing is not there. So there's a problem here with chronology, in the sense of who do you believe? And when did this early people in the Americas arrive? Now, there are two thoughts. Before the year 2000, there was some, it's called a Clovis first theory, the Clovis first theory. And then after that, let's have a look. Let's have a look. I might just read again the little bit that I left last time and go on to chronology. The archaeological community is in general agreement that the ancestors of the indigenous peoples of the Americas of historical record entered the Americas at the end of the last glacial maximum, LGM, shortly after 20,000 years ago, with a sustained archaeological presence shortly after 16,000 years ago. There remains uncertainties regarding the precise dating of individual sites and regarding conclusions drawn for population genetics studies of contemporary Native Americans. So genetics is becoming like the architect of, our knowledge of past presence on Earth. And it's going to get better, I'm sure. Chronology. In the early 21st century, the models of the chronology of migration are divided into two general approaches. The first is the short chronology theory, that the first migration occurred after the last glacial maximum, which went into decline after about 1900,000 years ago, and was then followed by successive waves of migration. The second theory is the long chronology theory, which proposes that the first group of people entered Beringia, the ice bridge, including ice-free parts of Alaska, at a much earlier date, possibly 40,000 years ago, followed by a much later second wave of immigrants. The Clovis first theory, which dominated thinking on New World anthropology for much of the 20th century, was challenged by the secure dating of archaeologists in the Americas to before 13,000 years ago in the 2000s. In other words, not even 20 years ago, from 20 years ago. We have greater, why? Because of our technology, the development in our technology, the computers, all these have got a great effect, and it'll have an impact, an enormous impact in terms of our discoveries of the universe. First of our solar system, planets and other satellites like the moon, and then we'll go further out. But again, you'd have to come back 200 years from now to see what really happens. For now, we're just going to be satisfied that we can pass on the baton to the next generation, say, do as well as we have so far and go further. The archaeosites in the Americas with the oldest dates that have gained broad acceptance are all compatible with an age of about 15,000 years ago. So we know from genetics, etc., that definitely there were people there from 15,000 years ago to 20,000, whatever. And this includes the Buttermilk Creek Complex in Texas. Buttermilk Creek Complex. You can go and visit it. the Meadowcroft rock shelter site in Pennsylvania, and the Monteverde site in southern Chile. Archaeological evidence of pre-Clovis peoples points to the South Carolina Topper site being 16 years old, at a time when the glacial maximum would have theoretically allowed for lower coastlines. So in other words, there's still a lot of ice there. It has often been suggested that an ice-free corridor in what is now Western Canada would have allowed migration before the beginning of the Holocene, Holocene, look it up. However, a 2016 study has argued against this, suggesting that the peopling of North America via such a corridor is unlikely to significantly predate the earliest Clovis sites. The study concludes that the ice-free corridor is what is now Alberta and British Columbia. Was gradually taken over by a boreal forest dominated by spruce and pine trees. Interesting, huh? We'll only go a little bit more, and then that's it for this week too. And that the Clovis people likely came from the south and not the north, perhaps following wild animals such as bison, because you can eat, meat. That's why I said that, probably humans followed the animals. An alternative hypothesis for the peopling of America is coastal migration, which may have been feasible along the deglaciated but now submerged coastline of the Pacific Northwest from about 16,000 years ago. That's where the Vikings come in, etc. So this is, there's some pictures here. Look, I'm going to leave it to you to look up if you're interested. This, the last glacial maximum, you have to look up. The key one, Beringia is another one, Clovis, those sort of words, and you can look it up. I don't need to do more than this, really. I mean, when you do your research, I can't rewrite the history. So I go with people who've done the research, who have put their work in whatever, like I do now. Please use my TomPadulaTV. Whatever I do is all free. Go for it. You want to use it, use it. You make money from it, great. Good luck to you. At the end of the day, we should be free to use knowledge for teaching and learning very freely. But, some people don't have the same opinion, of course. Now we go to our Indigenous people. When we come to the Indigenous people, you've got to remember that our First Nations people, when Captain Arthur Phillip arrived in Australia, and, again, Captain Cook came and went. And I also have some articles which, when Pino Bossi was alive, we talked about the Federation, and he's sort of he's a great guy. He knew a lot about this sort of history that I'm doing now, and in a way, it's also thanks to him to have added to my already interest in history from my early days in Italy. I was always attracted to it, and as the years have gone by, and I was somehow have a tendency to go back and have a look at what happens, but it's always with a view of the future. I don't look at the past in a nostalgic sense. I look at the past in a very practical sense. What happened, and what can we learn from it, and what do we do? Now, this is death and mourning in the Indigenous people. So we've done children, men and women. Now, how do you respect the dead? And we have on our television screens, we don't want to see the people, there are some Indigenous people may be offended by the fact that you mentioned somebody who died. You know, it's part of the world, the spirit world. Well, again, you know, in some other parts of the world, I don't want to be. I want to be remembered even after. If you know, feel free. I mean, it's a passage for us too, here on earth. We don't have a very long time, really. We've got the maximum that the person can, it's 120 years. Now it's about 80. So there's still a little bit of, but a lot of the extension of life is thanks to medicine and all the experiments that they do. So, you know, some people die in the process, but, you know, some people survive a lot for many years to come because of it. It's a risk factor. Death and mourning. I'm going to do just a bit and then I will stop. Yeah. The death of a very old person was regarded as natural, and so was the death of a baby or young child. Of course, a young child's death caused great sadness to the parents, of course. In the Kimberley region of Western Australia, a mother carried the body of her dead baby with her until it could be put into a special cave that had paintings of the family's clan's Wangina ancestors. And I've heard of Wangina ancestors before from this book and other books. In Victoria, the mother could not be parted from the dead body of her child as she carried it for a long time. Wow, you can't. What about the smell and all that? In all parts of Australia, the whole community felt grief at the death of an adult, but also anger and a desire for revenge. If the death had occurred in a feud, then the culprit was known. The dead person's group would seek to kill the murderer or one of his family or clan, unless the feud could be settled by payment or whatever. And that's also happened in Europe as well, amongst the Vikings, you know, the idea of revenge. And even amongst Christian people in southern Italy, revenge for various was common, and I assume even today. Death through sickness of any person other than a child or a very old person was thought to be due to sorcery. Somebody had pointed a bone at this person. This was termed singing. It was then the task of the doctor to find out who the sorcerer was. Something that the sick person had said before death or some sign on the dead body could give him a clue. When the doctor had found out who the sorcerer was, then a revenge expedition set out. Who had done the singing? Pointed finger. Among the Aranda of Central Australia, the executioners were called Kurdaija men. Very rarely a woman could go on a revenge expedition. Very rarely, but that doesn't mean they couldn't do it. They could, but they didn't. They wore slippers of emu feathers that hid their tracks, and they in turn pointed the bone at the culprit. Singing was widely used throughout Australia. The instrument was often made of the leg bone of a dead person which had been given magic power by a sorcerer. It only had to be pointed, even from a great distance, at the victim, while the revenge party sang special chants to make him sicken and die, or the avengers might actually spear, club or strangle him to death. If a person became sick and everyone knew he had been sung, then the doctor of his own group, who was also the sorcerer, the doctor and the sorcerer. We've divided those two now. We've got spiritual enlighteners and doctors, different category. Then the doctor of his own group, who was also the sorcerer, might be able to use more powerful sorcery to cure him by ridding him of the evil magic. If his attempts failed, then the victim would inevitably die, and in turn his family and community would seek revenge. This feud would go on indefinitely unless it could be finally settled by discussion and exchange of gifts or women. So we're going to tackle this, how do you sort this one out in a chapter away from now. So I'm going to stop there. That's interesting, isn't it? Death and mourning. Yeah. I might just continue. When someone was about to die from sickness, his or her relatives might watch and wait patiently in silence, or they sang sacred songs and wailed, hugging the dying person. After death, there were many ways of dealing with the body, according to the customs of the region. It might be burnt, buried, put in a cave, or placed in a tree or on a platform and later buried. In the Western Desert, it was placed on a platform until the bones were clean. Then some of the bones were given to the immediate relatives and the rest buried with special rituals. A widow would carry an arm bone of her dead husband for the rest of her life. This reminded her of him and showed her a grief. In Arnhem Land, after the bones were cleaned, they were placed in a log coffin. The coffin was placed upright in a place which then became sacred to the dead person and was avoided by the living. A bit like the Egyptians with their, with their dead. But because it was so hot, etc., the flesh would melt away and the bones were left. Okay, so next time we'll continue from here. Did I do it right? Yes? No? Yeah? Was avoided by the living. Good. Okay. Banjo Patterson. Hello, Francis Gallo. Welcome. So far, we've done the Normans in Europe. We've done the three kingdoms in China, in northern China, and we've also done the chronology of North America. Now, also the death and mourning within our indigenous peoples of Australia. Now, this is A.B. Patterson. Let's see how I go. Rio Grande's last race. Now, this was what Macpherson told while waiting in the stand. A reckless rider, overbold, the only man with hands to hold the rushing Rio Grande horse. He said, "This day I bid goodbye to bit and bridle rein, to ditch deep and fences high, for I have dreamed a dream and I shall never ride again. I dreamed last night I rode this race that I today must ride, and cantering down to take my place, I saw full many an old friend's face come stealing to my side. Dead men on horses long since dead, they clustered on the track, the champions of the days long fled. They moved around with noiseless tread, bay, chestnut, brown and black. These are the spirits. And one man on a big grey steed rode up and waved his hand. Said he, 'We help a friend in need, and we have come to give our lead to you and Rio Grande. For you must give the field the slip, so never draw the rein, but keep him moving with the whip. And if he falter, set your lip and raise him up again. But when you reach the big stone wall, put down your bridle hand and let him sail. He cannot fall. But don't you interfere at all. You trust old Rio Grande.' We started, and in front we showed the big horse running free, right fearlessly and game he strode. And by my side those dead men rode, whom no one else could see. As silently as flies a bird, they rode on either hand. At every fence I plainly heard the phantom leader give the word, 'Make room for Rio Grande.' I spurred him on to get the lead. I chanced full many a fall, but swifter still each phantom steed kept with me, and at racing speed we reached the big stone wall. And there the phantoms on each side drew in and blocked his leap. make room, I loudly cried, but right in front they seemed to ride. I cursed them in my sleep. Oh my gosh. He never flinched, he faced it game. He struck it with his chest, and every stone burst out in flame, and Rio Grande and I became as phantoms with the rest. And then I woke, and for a space all nerveless did I seem. For I have ridden many a race, but never one at such a pace as in that fearful dream. And I am sure a man can be that out upon the track, those phantoms that men cannot see are waiting now to ride with me, and I shall not come back. For I must ride the dead men's race, and follow their command, 12 worse than death, the foul disgrace, if I should fear to take my place today on Rio Grande. He mounted and I jested through, with never sign of gloom, but all who heard the story knew that Jack Macpherson, brave and true, was going to his doom. Wow. They started, the race begins, and I gave myself a bit of a break. They started, and the big black steed came flashing past the stand, all single-handed in the lead. He strode along at racing speed, the mighty Rio Grande. But on his ribs the wild bones stung, a madness it did seem, and soon it rose on every tongue that Jack Macpherson rode among the creatures of his dream. Wow. Mon Dieu. He looked to the left and looked to the right, as though men rode besides, and Rio Grande with foam flecks white raced at his jumps in a headlong flight and cleared them in his stride. But when they reached the big stone wall, down went the bridle hand, and loud we heard Macpherson call, "Make room, or half the field will fall. Make room for Rio Grande. He's down, and horse and men lay quite side by side. No need to the pallid face to scan. We knew with Rio Grande he ran the race the dead men ride." Last race for Macpherson, huh? Jack Macpherson. Wow. He went to his death riding a horse and with the horse. Not bad, huh? Okay. Time for Henry Lawson. I'm going to keep it a bit short here because I want to do a bit of my trip after this. The Bush Undertaker. And we're going to see some crocodiles today. The Bush Undertaker. This is a new story by Henry Lawson. Okay, it's quite a few pages still, and I'm going to just do the first page, and then we'll keep going until we get to the end. Okay, 5 Bob, it's called. 5 Bob. The old man shaded his eyes and peered through the dazzling glow of that broiling Christmas day. He stood just within the door of a slab and bark hut situated upon the bank of a barren creek. Shipyards lay to the right, and a low line of bare brown ridges formed a suitable background to the scene. "5 Bob!" shouted he again. In a dusty sheepdog rose wearily from the shaded side of the hut and looked inquiringly at his master, who pointed towards some sheep which were straggling from the flock. So the dog's name was 5 Bob. "Fetch him back," he said confidently. The dog went off, and his master returned to the interior of the hut. "We'll yard them early," he said to himself. "The super won't know." The super won't know? Who's the super? "We'll yard them early and have the afternoon to ourselves." No, the superior, I suppose. The boss won't know. "We'll get dinner," he added, glancing at some pots on the fire. I can't do a bit of dough boy, and that there, bogabril, eat like tatamara along of the salt meat. My God, that's a bit of a slang there. He moved one of the black buckets from the blaze. I likes to keep it just on the sizzle, he said in explanation to himself. Hard billing makes it tough. I'll keep it just simmering. Here his soliloquy was interrupted by the return of the dog. All right, Five Bob, said the Hatter. Dinner'll be ready directly. Just keep your eye on the sheep till I calls ya. Keep them well rounded up and we'll yard them afterwards and have a holiday. I think that's it, they have a holiday. So once the sheep are in, they can, it's not bad. All right, I'm going to dedicate now the rest of the time to, to my wonderful trip that I took. Now I have to get back to, yes, no, maybe. The computer, always the same. Never cooperates. Yes, it's cooperated now. Here we go. All right, now, we went to the casino, then dinner, and then the next day, which was the 11th of July, we said, I had a photo here with my sister. It's a nice one. And I think he's the guy here, he's the, what do you call him? The driver, all right? So here we go. Enjoy it. And I'll be doing some explanations. There we are. Okay. Now, there'll be quite a few. That's the next morning, and we are leaving here. So, explanations in Darwin, and then we move along. And this is we leave it here, and this is, our lunch. And here, one of my colleagues, a beautiful singer, Mina, and the husband, and the bus, and the open places. And here we are in Wak Wak in Darwin, Australia. Well, that's where the crocodile place is. And this, of course, there we are. The Adelaide River, another one of my colleagues there, and there's the boarding pass, Pathfinder, crocodile cruise. We got to the crocs. Are they going to eat us? Look at those coconuts, huh? Big ones. That's what you see. I like to take different photos. There we are. We're off and running on the boat. So let's have a look what I say. Welcome to TomPadulaTV here in Croc Country, and we're about to go off. That's it. Now, I'm just going to put my hand out. Oh, wonderful. So we're off and running. They were all very excited of the fact that I, was taking, curious that I was taking so much filming. Well, you know how it is. I've got, a job to do. Well, fantastic, Ruff. Here we go. That's it. The warnings now about, this is the first feeling. Boss is here, looking on. Here are the lovely people. That's it. And this is now the boatman.
Back to that dock in an hour's time with all your body parts. Let me show you all coming back to road. I hate paperwork. It's way too cold for paperwork.
I don't see any crocodiles here.
No, there's none in this river. Well, they tell you, you come and look for crocodiles. There's none here. We're going fishing.
Of course, he didn't finish there. I didn't take a lot, just a little bit.
So by law, I have to tell you where our life jackets are. So underneath the people down there on the back seat, there's a bright orange life jacket for everyone. I'm sure they'll hand them out if we need.
I'm not sharing with anyone.
All right. You want to get off? No refunds. And if you seriously want to get off,
It's called the Adelaide River.
see you down there later, all right?
It's a conservation area as well.
You can see there's a crocodile. 50 head.
And everyone is excited about seeing the crocodiles. Me too.
He's a 5 metre fella. He's the dominant male for this patch of the river. He's called Nifty. But Nifty doesn't do anything till after lunch. He's a bloody lazy crocodile, that bugger.
Well, we're off and running, as they say, after the warnings about crocodiles eating people up and making sure that the crew here stays well within the bounds of the boat. And yeah, it's very enjoyable. A bit cool this morning, but it's fine by me. That's the first croc. This is our first croc. Hello, croc. Good morning. There he is. Quite innocuous in the water, away from us.
All around the world knows how to do it. 23 species. They all learn very young. As you can see, the water's overhanging. The trees are overhanging the water. So
I reckon a good steak.
the duck's built, so we call it a duck is a duck.
Notice the meat. Get to entice the croc to come and get the meat.
So what she's trying to do is watching me, when I turn my head, she's going to try and steal this food.
Not hungry. Not hungry, come on. You're on camera.
Watch her hands, you've got to lift her head up, push her tail down. She's not the most energetic crocodile first thing in the morning, but none of us really are.
And the croc is pretty smart because, yeah, see? He studies the situation. He'll eventually get there.
She's got 66 teeth in her head. These guys are born with all those teeth. They lose them regularly fighting, but can replace them up to 40 times during their life. By the teeth we need.
Ah, got it, finally. Oh, no, I didn't get it.
She should go a bit higher this time. And up we go. Hold on, we've got a couple of waves coming in.
Gotcha. We'll search for another croc now. Where are they? Looking for crocs. Oh, the crocs.
Of the males, he ruffles his belly and he'll rip a little water up above his back and then go and see the lady and see if she's interested. And then he'll grab her by the one front leg and then he'll roll around and do what he's got to do. As the male crocodile actually has two things, so whichever side he rolls around, he's got one that come out and do the job.
We're still looking for crocs. Sorry, Aurora, but no crocs today, yeah? They've all gone away. And probably Aurora's here, that's why the crocs are staying away. Welcome to Assunta Lombardi. This is for you too. We are in Maracay Creek, it's called, or it's like the conservation area. Okay, here we go. Did you say one croc? I said one croc is not enough. But I got him. I captured him. A really big croc. One that will eat Aurora. That's it. They've got a good job with me, that's for sure. There is a crocodile, finally, we got one. We finally got one. We could find him. Of course, you had to go back. There it comes. The croc is coming. Norman.
Come here, Normie.
Norman's a dominant male from here onwards. Oh, really? I don't know how many girlfriends he's got though.
He's the stud. Stallion, that's what the guys used to say.
You'll need both of them.
He's very close to a ton.
Wow.
Oh, he's got another.
Again, trying to attract the croc. Oh, there it is.
There you go. Manja. Right. Turn around. Oh, that's beautiful. Good stuff.
They're trying to film it as well.
Come on, Norman.
I think if I drop my phone, like I did in Capri.
Oh, no. He's worn out, mate.
It's kissing you.
Don't get on, don't put your car's coming back.
I'll do it again.
We eventually got there though. Here we go.
Listen, you come.
he made it. So that was good.
Himself up and cooling himself down. But on his back, it's rock hard. His armour plating, on his belly, soft as a baby's bottom. That's where the Gucci handbag comes from.
There are. There's more meat there. See? Could be our arm, or could be our leg, or whatever. You won't distinguish. Meat is meat.
An excellent underwater video.
Looking at somebody's going to have breakfast.
Norman, you're really looking at somebody's there.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Get her closer to him so he'll jump.
You staying on that Don't put your hands out, girls.
So eventually, another male crocodile is going to take this guy and pick on him and try and kill him for his turf. And all he's got, mate.
Is he under the boat?
He's coming towards us.
And this guy can hold his breath for about an hour and just disappear in less than a metre of water.
Come on. Whoop.
So I made the glass nice and clean.
Oh my God.
And this is the only time you want to be this close to one of these guys. And see how he isn't going so high then, he's getting a bit tired. It uses a lot of their energy doing this jump. I'll just get him to do one more for
Fell out of the water just to get him in.
You can if you like.
And then you saw he was sitting up in the sun, warming himself up, so now he's all fired up and ready to go. Come on. Come on. Come on, big boy.
Oh, well, let's see if we got it. Oh, the next one. Got the whole lot.
It's a whole lot.
Unbelievable, huh? Crocs.
See ya.
Come on, mate.
Bye.
Oh, here. Woo. There you are. Going away.
Got his meat.
Ain't going there, Norman.
Just waiting for the croc.
Come on.
There's another one.
Croc.
Might want a new girlfriend.
Yeah, doing well.
See, I tell you, you want to come back as a crocodile. He has many girlfriends.
I'm doing that one that wants a hat. That lady wants a handbag.
I want the handbag. I want
Come on, come on. Go, big boy. Come on.
No, he goes, don't bother me, I'm tired.
Come on.
I need a pay rise. I want a bigger steak.
Kissing.
Here he comes. Yeah, he's teasing you. He's playing with you. And he's like,
Well, we've understood now how they work.
You know what I mean?
Very quick.
You see on his tail there?
Got him, huh?
Got him. Well
Bravo.
done. First try.
Smart croc.
No, mate, that wasn't the rule, mate. Cut that in. Well, I think he doesn't want to come in.
Man beaten by crocodiles.
Never want to be children or animals. Nothing goes to plan.
Happy people. They've seen the crocs now.
Done back in the early days before we went shooting. Back in the 60s through to the mid-70s, they shot every crocodile they could find.
Have you ever seen one croc eating another?
Definitely. Yep, sure have.
they're territorial.
They are. This big fella, he owns from here onwards for the next half a kilometre. Each female crocodile, once she starts nesting, she'll pick herself a nesting spot, and that's her turf, about 25 metres either side of that nest. And she'll live there for the rest of her life. The next average lifespan for the female crocodile was only about 50 years. So,
The way back now, we've seen the crocs. The next lot will be some birds, I think. I'm a bit over time, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to keep going until this particular section finishes. More crocs.
first batch of eggs, so she doesn't really know what to do with it. And she comes swimming out. You see the little one? Oh, you've got the cat. It's a little baby. Yes.
I'm actually going to go back now, have a look. Yeah, up. There's still quite a lot, and I'm over time, and I think we're going to go for, oh, here we are. Oh, there's still quite a bit there, so I'll keep going next week, and then we'll go to the next one as well. So we'll finish off here. It's been quite an interesting hour so far, and a bit more, but I hope you enjoyed it. It's as much as I have, and yeah, this was program 47. Thank you very much for coming on. Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. Just look me up, insegna.com. Okay, see you next time. Ciao.